we go. Okay, fantastic. So I shall hand over to you, Rich, to talk to us about web design.
Thank you very much. So thank you to Jane, first of all, for inviting me to the group. I think it was Friday last week. And as a sort of Saturday afternoon, I'd agreed to do this talk. So if it's slightly rough around the edges, that's because I've not slept. And while I talk about this all day, every day, and can bore most people, actually putting the structure is completely different. So, but yes, so we are Long Live King. We started around 7 years ago, and I think probably the last 3 to 4 years is where we've kind of found our feet and found our purpose. I've been building websites since 2002 at university, so for a long time. And I think all the things we've done, or I've done over the years, has always kind of been to that point of efficiency. And I don't think we really pulled that all together, as I say, until the last few years, and actually started working with a few vegan brands. And we indulge ourselves and learn as much as we possibly can about people. And it started to kind of tick a few boxes in our heads and connect a few dots in terms of what our purpose was and has been, but we never framed it, basically. And we went from wanting to work with purpose-driven people to actually saying, well, what can our service be to support that? And that basically comes down to low carbon websites, and we build applications and tools and systems. So again, automation, making things a lot slicker. Efficiency is the big part of that. So that's where we are now. And we recently launched a new website that just 100% commits to low carbon websites. And it kind of jars a little bit because it's not the typical web agency website that most people expect, but that's the whole entire point. So I'll go back a little bit. So what's the problem we're trying to find a solution to? The internet is a physical thing, but for the vast majority, the connection between the virtual world, which we're all part of now, has a physical side. You know, it's not clouds. That's a computer somewhere in a building using electricity to store information and to transfer it away, basically. There are 2 billion websites roughly on the internet. There was only 1 billion back in 2014, so we've doubled that in about 8 years, which is a bit scary because that's going to carry on growing. That equates to 1 billion tons of CO2 every year, which is roughly the same as the aviation industry, which is quite scary considering the amount of planes that are flying around all day, every day. So that data that's causing these emissions through data transfer, through storage, all that electricity that's used, essentially what it is, it's per gigabyte of data transfer, we're kind of estimating it's around 3 kilograms of carbon that's emitted. So, and that doesn't sound a huge amount, but when you consider the scale of the internet and websites and all the things that we're doing, the Zoom call, for example, it really does scale up. And websites are part of the problem. You've got advertising, you've got all sorts of bits and pieces where we use the web for things. So, for an example, to kind of give some context, if we take a single megabyte off of a website, if we've got, for example, a very simple website, 10 pages, the average generally seems to be around 10,000 views per month. So I'm going to take that as an average to give you an idea on scale. If we took off 1 megabyte from that website, over a year, we would save 3.6 tons of CO2 for 1 megabyte. So it's massive. And I would bet that we could take a hell of a lot more than a megabyte off of pretty much every website. And at scale, especially when you're looking at some massive websites, 100,000, 10,000 views a month is probably nothing. There's websites that have got millions. So even if we took off half of a megabyte, the savings would be huge. So that's the kind of scale of the issue and what we're trying to aim to reduce. So it's trying to work out how we got to where we are now. So back in 2002, I'm really going to age myself because it feels like a lifetime ago. So websites at the time were very basic, HTML tables. There was no fancy stuff going on that we've got now. You know, you couldn't dream of putting video on the web. It wouldn't have happened. I think my first website I ever built managed to fit onto a floppy disk. So it's 1.4 megabytes was the limit because I had to go and give it in as an assignment. So we're working with different parameters now. You know, we were working to dial-up internet. There was no mobile, and when mobile came along, it was little small green screens. There was no internet on phones. So that's where we've came from. And you know, we had to be small. We had to be very efficient with how we delivered what we were doing. So it made us think a little bit more about what our reasoning was for each element. Do we choose to have an image? Because if we have a big image on this page, then you know it might not be able to go on another page, or it might take 5 minutes for someone to view the page. So we were a lot more detail orientated in those days. We didn't get carried away with chucking everything at the website. But now, broadband came along, super fast fibre, and who knows where else we'll take this. It's unlimited data, which is not. It's not unlimited. There's electricity that's used to produce that and send it over to people. So, but what we've done is gone, well, it's lovely and fast now. We can send video down the line and give that to people. Well, we can, but should we? Should we be really thinking about the purpose? And I'm going to say the word purpose a lot in the next sort of 10-15 minutes because that's the core of it. It's that old thing, you know, if we put another lane on the M25, we'd fill it with more cars. And we do the same with the internet. Got faster broadband, we can send things down it. So we just throw stuff down there without a thought about what we're actually trying to achieve. So I think the best way for us to look at how we improve this is purpose and efficiency, and consciously thinking about every detail, every decision that we're making in terms of how we deliver the message that we have to tell people, basically. And it's a technical thing, it's a design thing, and it's a commercial thing for businesses. You know, focusing on what you're actually trying to do, what you're trying to achieve, and then the best way of doing that, rather than just throwing everything at it and hoping something sticks. A big part of that is also actually to encourage everybody else to have that same process in their thoughts. So I know we've got a couple of people on the call that have got online shops. It's a very good example of a clothing brand I saw a little while ago where you could choose to view the images of the product. So rather than just showing you the image, they gave you the option, if you're interested in this t-shirt, click here to see what it looks like. And they had a little sketch of it beforehand, so you got an idea that it was a t-shirt. So it's trying to give people control over how they consume your content, rather than just throwing videos and big images at them. So that's the overview of what we can try and do and where we can start to think about making changes. So I'm going to start with the design side of things because that's the starting point for any build. I think overall the art of design has kind of been lost a little bit. I think we've got a little bit lazy and we follow trends a lot of the time, and for good reason, because things work and people expect those things to be there. But actually what we try and do then is say, well, this is the layout people are using. How can we retrofit our stuff to that structure and then tweak it and things like that? Well, actually, what happens, actually, you can sometimes lose a message. And if you look at a lot of web agencies or creative agencies, you could get 100 of them in a row. You could squint a little bit and they will look pretty much the same in general. You know, big hero images, big video backgrounds, a grid for all their portfolio, a blog section, I'm generalizing, but when you look at it, there is some really sort of strong patterns, and it works for a lot of people. There's a reason why there's, you know, familiarity that people will look for, then, you know, feel a bit more comfortable. But actually, sometimes your purpose might be different to that. You might want to jar a little bit and drag people's attention to what you're doing and what you're saying. So I think design has got a big part to play in this. So then we've got to the point now where, and we were guilty of this, you know, a couple of years ago, you know, full screen images, full screen videos, full screen everything. And actually the size of these images that we're using, videos obviously are, you know, very large drain on energy and data. You know, what is the purpose of these? Sometimes it's brilliant, sometimes it works. I'm not against any of that stuff that's happening, but a lot of the time we use a lot of stock photos. So very generic, used probably on 1,000 websites somewhere else in a different capacity. Some don't always really relate to the content and add value to that content. So it's trying to look at some of those things that we're doing. We hide a lot of content as well. So a lot of time you have like a carousel, first bit on the website that's got 3 or 4 slides. So 4 big images in one screen at the top of your page. A lot of people won't get to see all of those. It probably doesn't work very well on mobile. So you're going to find that there's a lot of waste. And I think the waste is the big bit that we want to try and challenge and say to people, do you need it? Does it need to be there? If it does, what's the best way of executing that and working around it? So for us, so we've just built our own new website and we challenge all of these thoughts. You know, do we need a case study section? Do we need a blog? Does anyone really read it? Does anyone care? Probably not. We do a lot of our talking and you know, sharing of information on LinkedIn and things like this. So to have another page, to have, you know, another section of images, it didn't feel right. You know, that might change over time. We might find that people do want to hear about us, and we'll find the right way of doing that. But we're not going to start in that place. So if you have a chance to have a look at our website, just to give some context, it's very stripped back. It's text, a couple of icons. We link to our case studies, but we don't show all the big pictures on our website because we're consciously making an effort for us to make a point, to make a statement, and we are different. This is why we're different. This is what we're trying to achieve. So we focus on the message, and found an amazing copywriter to get that across. That was where our focus was. And that is the biggest takeaway from this, is just thinking about that purpose and what you need to do to achieve that. Not everybody has to be extreme. Not every website has to be black and white text. I get it. It's not the point. You know, it's trying to find the way to execute that. You know, some people work in animation and video. They're going to need videos on that. It's fine. But then you think about all the technical stuff, which I'll come on to. So content is obviously the big part of that, structuring the site in different ways. Really important just to look at where you want people to look. You know, we've decided to go with a single page because there wasn't enough to make more than that. And we wanted to try and tell a story in a single piece. For others, it's going to be different. We're advising a company at the moment called Product of Change, and they had a video on their homepage. And we said, you know, it's great, but firstly, don't autoplay it. You don't want 100% of the people coming to your homepage to have to download and watch a video. If people are watching it, brilliant. Take them to another page, direct them there. If you're interested in watching this, go here, because then 100% of the people that are watching it and consuming that data are choosing to, you know, making those decisions and breaking that cycle. So what happens in terms of design and the art of minimal design and focus on what you're trying to achieve comes down to copy, fonts, sizes, white space, a balance, a flow, it's a real intricacies, and I think this is where sort of designers got a bit lazy, because we choose the easy route, we choose the trend, and we follow the pack. Or actually, if you start to think about what you're doing, you can make sure the fonts are the right kind of shape for your brand. You've got your headline at this size, the subhead at this size, like newspapers, like publishing. You grab their attention, you give a bit more detail, you give all the detail. If people are interested at the top two, then they read on, and so forth. So you go back to the basics of keeping people's attention and getting that natural feeling of reading a page of content. If you need graphics to illustrate a point, great, throw them in, because they're adding value to what you're trying to do. So some of the feedback we had on our site was, can we add some images in? There's a section about launching rockets, which I'll come on to in a second. But if we just put an icon in there or a picture of a rocket, I get it. People are interested in it, it ties into the thing, but it doesn't really add any value to them. And ultimately then what's going to happen is I'll have a block of text and an image. And below that, I'll have a block of text and an image. And in one fell swoop, our website looks like every other website out there. And then you almost become a little bit immune to it, because you've just seen the same thing over and over again. So your design can actually start to break the eye a little bit and draw people's attention into what it is you want them to look at, basically. So then we come on to things like colours. And colours is an interesting one for me, because obviously there's a design element to it, and you can draw people's attention, you can add character, you can add emotion into certain elements. From a technical perspective, you can save energy with the colours. So if you use dark mode at the moment, it's quite a popular thing. It's something we're going to add into our site. Don't want to follow the trend, but actually it makes good sense as well. The colour of the site, if you've got a nice bright white colour, your screen is going to use more energy. If it's black, it's going to use less energy. It's very, very small margins of gain on that, but these all add up. And again, playing around with things like that. If we do use images and graphics, again, we look at how we can implement those, how we can design them to be the most efficient they can be. So it might be that you use just black and white images. If you need to use photography, black and white's a good way to do it, or a single colour, and stylize them. I'd always recommend using graphics, so illustrations where possible, because they can be super small. They're a calculation, so the file size is super small and they're scalable. You can have them really small, you can have them really big. They're super flexible and a really kind of low impact on the site. We built a website recently for a company called Net Zero Marine. It's their kind of launch website, and we were very focused on keeping it as small as possible for them. So we've used a lot of graphics. Where we've had to use images, we've really thought about how we implement those. So at the top of the website, there is a circular carousel of a couple of images they wanted to show. Nothing too big, it's just 40% of the width of the content of the site. So then you start to think on a slightly technical point of, if we used a transparent file, a PNG, to make it circular, actually what we're doing is giving a really large file size to that, because it's having to work a lot harder for the transparency. So what we did was actually say, well, if we use a JPEG, then it's square, but we just fill in the colours around the back. So we don't need the transparency, doesn't need it. And the file size is half the size of the transparent one. The user has no idea. The outcome is exactly the same. And that's a big part with a lot of these things. You can reduce a lot of this stuff without making any visual impact on the website itself. So the user has no idea. It's just better. It's quicker. So, and it leads on to the next point, really. You find as well, a lot of these gains can be had, with these kind of blog articles, and you get a little thumbnail of the picture. What you'll find is that you've got a small little window, the size of the image that you're being shown. the image that's being loaded is about that big. So straight away, it's just waste. You make that file size the correct dimensions, and it'll be 30% of the size. So you probably save yourself 0.5 MB just doing that for one image. So again, its purpose is trying to look at the best way to design these things. What's the solution you need? I think design's maybe lost that problem solving a little bit because of that. So then it kind of moves on really quite nicely to the tech side of things, and the coding and the development of what we're trying to do. And again, it's kind of choosing that first point of development in terms of saying, well, what's the right solution for us? Do we want WordPress? Do we want some massive CMS that's overcomplicated? Do we want a single page that actually we could just code in, basic code? We don't need a CMS, we don't need a database, we don't need to load all these unnecessary files to achieve what we want to achieve. What's the most efficient way of doing that? And that's again a key decision at the start of a project, to execute something in the most efficient way, and not just go, well, we use WordPress, we use Shopify, we'll just do that, and we'll put a builder on it, or we'll buy a theme. It's trying to make those conscious decisions. There's themes out there. If you're on a budget and you want to just buy something off the shelf, there are sustainable green themes that you can use that are built more efficiently. And a lot of these themes, or these website builders that you can buy and use, build your own stuff, come with a lot of stuff. You'll be loading 20-30 JavaScript files just to get some sliders working and give you all the options in the world to build your website how you want it. And they become really heavy and really slow. So again, just have a little bit of thought, a little bit of purpose about how you're going about doing that and what you can try and do just to bring the data down. Because the more files you load, the more images, the bigger images, the more videos, your data is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's just going to increase that carbon footprint of your website. Going back to the efficiency side of things, again, the web is brilliant for that. So we build web applications, also known as progressive web apps. And this allows you to basically make a website responsive and actually work in a similar way to a native app. So essentially you can avoid, in most scenarios, you can avoid building an app for iPhone. You can avoid building an Android app. You can avoid building something slightly different for tablets. And generally, most time, people have a website version as well. So what we're trying to do is actually say, well, if you've got the website piece or you're building that, make it a progressive web app, because then you can install it on every device, just in one solution. So again, platform is very important to make sure you're just building one thing as much as you possibly can. If you can build one thing that it just resizes and works for different places, that's the best way of doing things. Absolutely. Built a platform for vegan brand down in Brighton, a sushi place called Happy Mackie, and they've got a tablet in their store for taking payments. So they've got a really interesting pay-as-you-fill model to try and help the community, and for those that can't afford it, they can pay a little bit less. And obviously there's no kind of card reader out there that allowed them to do that. So we built this app that sits next to their counter on their card machine. People put in how much they want to pay, tap their card, and off it goes. So that's been done via a web app, and it means that we can go in, make some changes, which we've done for the last 2 years. Very much a social experiment. The user experience has changed 5, 6, 7 times in that space of time, but we can make updates on our side, upload the files, and they're in the shop there and then. It's super quick. There's no going to the app store, waiting to jump through a few hoops that Apple might throw your way, and then wait a couple of days for it to be available. It's there, it's done, it's live. So we're starting to kind of get into the more commercial aspects of that as well now. And again, the things that make it fast are making sure we use less images and videos. Compression is a massive part of that again. You know, if you got to say, look, I want this image to be the full width of my content, there's a purpose behind it. Great. So we've got a file size now that we know we need to try and work with. 99% of the time, you can make that smaller. You can strip out some data from the back that tells you when you created it and where in the world it was created. You don't need that information. You can make the file size and the quality slightly smaller. So you can generally save images out like 90%, and you're never going to notice the difference other than the file size. Videos are the same thing. There's so many compression tools out there. Or you've got things like Vimeo and YouTube that are, you know, that's all they do all day, every day. They compress and make videos as small as physically possible to stream super, super quickly. So use the tools. Don't host video on your own site, because it's never going to be as good as you can get on something like that, unless you know what you're doing, obviously. And then you've got all the unwanted stuff. You know, if you've got files that just don't need to be loaded. We went to the extreme actually when we built our site of adjusting the fonts that we used. So we realized that actually a font file has got thousands of characters that you might use, we won't use. So we found the traditional set of characters that we are going to use, the exclamation marks and all the punctuations plus letters and numbers, and we got rid of the rest. Yes, we might put some back in at some stage, but actually for now we reduced the size of that file considerably, because there was stuff in there that was wasted, just wasn't needed. And it's that process then when you start getting to the finer details of technical stuff, of thinking about how to minimize everything. So our website is a single page. All of the images in there are SVG, so the graphics, but you can convert them to code because they're calculations of shapes and stuff. So that's all in there as code. So we're not asking for 4 or 5 images to be loaded. It just loads the page of code. All of our styles are in there. We've got no external style sheets. It's all in line. Everything is just compact. And then you've got some clever stuff online where you can just compress it all into like a single line of code that's really messy. You can't understand it at all, but who cares? It's on the server. It runs super quick. There's loads of techniques in terms of storing local files, so you don't have to go all the way to the server to grab it. And I won't go into all that because that bores me, to be fair. So I won't impart that on you guys on a Monday morning.
Rich, that's been super interesting. I'm conscious that we've only got about 5 minutes, and I think there's probably quite a few people with questions based on the way the chat's going. So
okay.
if you're all right, I'd love to open it up just to any kind of questions for the last couple of minutes.
Yeah, sure.
Really interesting. Go on.
I've got two little bits that I just want to cover off. So the benefits, obviously saving the planet, reducing carbon footprint of your websites. They're faster. They've got more focus on your message and your purpose. They're more accessible. So mobile devices, if people are on dial-up still, they can get your website, and the search engines love that. So you've got faster, better performance, and better SEO, which as a combination is brilliant. So I'll leave you on this. Design with purpose, question every detail, and build like you're being charged for every megabyte. That should bring you some focus on that. And that's it. That's me done now.
Brilliant. Excellent. Thank you, Rich. Really interesting. And I think your point about carbon footprint is equivalent to size and therefore speed is really important actually as well, because things have definitely got belated. Right. Okay. We've got time for probably a couple of questions maximum. So I can see, Michael, you've got your hand up. So I shall let you jump in first. If anyone wants to use the old raise hand, can you go to the front of the queue because I can see you there.
I didn't have my hand up actually. I was just congratulating him But I mean, I had a quick look at your website, and I thought it was really fascinating. The black and white actually looked really cool. I thought it looked really interesting. But they say like a picture paints 1,000 words. If you want to hook people in, it feels like they may be going to miss a trick. Although they're committed to low carbon, they're actually not going to develop the business because the things that draw people in are not going to be on those websites. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a conversation I've had with a few people, because I guess it's what people expect to see. Some graphics and like the case studies especially. It's very much something that I'm aware of and taking note of. I think for me, our old website was very much typical web agency, and before the new one, we had a holding page that was very stripped back, and it started a lot more conversation around what we're trying to achieve than our old one ever did. So I think it's sort of seeing how that develops. And again, I'm not saying it's 100% correct and it's the right thing for us, 100, perfectly, but it's trying to push the boundaries and seeing where we go. And ultimately, this is a starting point for us. So we're going to slowly grow and see what people think and see if it does fall down. I'm not scared of it falling down. I think it starts some great conversations and gets the point across. And say, it's not for everybody. People, graphics and images are really important.
I thought it looked very cool, and I thought the Happy Mackie website as well, which I just went on to as well, also looks very cool, really good. So
yeah, it matches our brand. We're very stripped back and let the work do the talking, other than me do the talking, obviously. But yeah, that's the whole point. That's us. That's our brand. So it kind of fits. Doesn't fit for everybody, that technique, but yeah.
Cool, thank you. Right, so James asked, can anyone remove not required characters in fonts? I suspect I know the answer to this, but go for
it. Possibly. I don't know. I don't know how it was done. Fortunately, I've got some clever people that work with me, so but I can find out and come back to you on that side.
It's fine. If my sister was here, she would be having a leppy. Oh my God, don't touch my fonts. I just wondered if it was more on the coder's side, that sort of thing can be done.
Generally, yes, I would say
right.
So. Yeah.
Okay. Oop. Thank you.
Right, we're just about at time. I'll be a bit cheeky and squeeze in one last question if anyone's got one. Otherwise, we'll wrap. Wave now if you want to ask any more questions. No? Okay. All right. Thank you very much for that, Rich. I shall stop the recording now.